Hello, everybody, and welcome to On the Hook, the official YPM podcast. My name is Rick. I'll be your host for the next half hour to 45 minutes. We have a really special episode for you today. April is YPM's 8th anniversary. So we decided we'd bring on our partners and creators of YPM, Mitch Cohen and Keith Pape. And we're going to start with Mitch. Mitch, introduce yourself. I know all of our clients know you, but I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are wondering, who are the faces behind YPM? Start with Mitch. What do you do here?
I am Mitch Cohen. I am the Executive Creative Director at Yellow Pike Media.
Awesome. And Keith Pape, coffee guy, right?
Right, exactly.
I've been here a day or two.
Exactly. As long as I can make us a good cup of coffee, we are good to go.
So why don't we actually go with who you really are? And remember, it's a 30-minute show.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'll try to keep it short. Keith Pape, founder and CEO of Yellow Pike Media.
Now, I don't know what to do for 28 minutes.
Yeah,
Seriously, though, this is great. Happy anniversary, guys. I count myself extremely lucky to have been here fairly early on. But you guys put together a way of doing business I think is super interesting and super unique. So I would really love to understand the whole journey to get from that first day and how that went down when you two came together and said, let's do this thing, because I know pieces of it. So I want to make sure everybody hears the whole thing.
The key is sleep deprivation. That is, if Mitch wasn't so sleep deprived, I would have had no chance.
So let's even back up one step further. What are your individual backgrounds and how did you end up doing this together? So let's start with Mitch.
I come from creative writing and directing, filmmaking in Chicago, very independent, low budget films for a number of years. Then I came out to LA, was doing some writing and directing out here. And then I got a job opportunity in video games to produce, write, and direct trailers. And this was when you were able to first start to take the camera and move it around the game world. So I had that experience of making films. And so I kind of had a knack for how to move the camera and direct, players running across the field and set scenes. And I started directing trailers and doing that kind of stuff. And that kind of launched my career in gaming. And then I moved into the original content when that kind of happened, as YouTube was becoming a thing and influencers and making content there. And I started doing that stuff and, being a combination of doing gameplay trailers and live action shooting. And that led me here.
Mitch, do you remember what your very first game was professionally?
It was Blue Dragon.
Blue Dragon. I don't even think I know that one.
It was a junior RPG game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Wow, that's old school. Keith, what about you? How did you get here? Tell us the journey from.
I have no idea. I have no clue. I joined the Army right out of high school. Actually, I joined before I got out of high school. So the John Wayne movies were strong. But as a kid, I had played Dungeons and Dragons. So that was kind of definitely that's the DNA of it. So I was in the Army for 5 years. I got tired of being shot at. So I had my first son. So it was like, okay, that's enough of that. This seems like a bad idea going forward. And I got out and I thought, I think like everybody who gets out of the Army, they first thinking, okay, am I going to be a postal worker or am I going to be a cop? Those seem to be the two options. And I thought I was going to be a cop because it seemed like it was just, you're so young, you just have no idea. And there was a hiring freeze, weirdly enough. Sounds like today, there was a hiring freeze. They'd done some layoffs. There was a hiring freeze. And so now my entire life plan had gone sideways. And so I went to the local community college and I just signed up. I'm like, well, I've got nothing to do for 6 months until the hiring freeze is over. I'll go to school, which was not my plan. Because just school wasn't my thing. And I got fortunate enough over the next couple of years to be mentored by some really great people that set me down the technology route. I'm much more secure. Mitch was lucky enough that he knew what he wanted to be, at least some idea, and I did not in any way. So I kind of learned technology while in school. And then the beginning of my career was about the same time as the internet was first happening. We had early Mozilla when I was in university, and I had some early .com jobs, like early. And believe it or not, my boss was fired for embezzling money from the .com startup we were in. And I was more on the engineering side. And the owner came to me and said, "Hey, you're now the head of the web development team, in addition to the engineering team." And I was like, I know nothing about what you're talking about. It was pictures, and there were people had to answer phones to manually process e-commerce orders. I mean, it was early. All the e-commerce sites were bikini models at the time. No legitimate companies had them. But really, then over the next year or two, I figured out, one, I was a terrible engineer. My math is sketchy at best. You guys have seen how I do math just on budgets. Everything's a very Picasso. That's close enough.
It's impressionist math.
And funny enough, in engineering, that doesn't work so well. And so I really, web started being accepted as part of the marketing department after not too long. And I was like, oh, this is way better than engineering and wearing a white button-up shirt and a tie. And so I wandered around a couple companies and 3 different startups. Each time it was, the youth side of I knew better than the boss who had just screwed up the company, which is why I was getting laid off again. And so I'd start companies. I'd talk Nicole into it. She'd tell me what a terrible idea it was. I would then find out everything I didn't know about starting a business, and I'd burn it to the ground horribly. But I learned something from it. It's like, I should have been in the Marine Corps instead of the Army, because I only learned by banging my head against a wall. It really is crazy. And it was really kind of this back and forth for what? So from 99 until 2008 in the financial crisis, I bounced around from trying to start my own agency, failing, and then getting a job to learn what I thought I had failed at, to learn that information, and then starting another one. And the final one was 2008. I laid off 22 people from my agency in a single day because of the mortgage crisis. The mortgage industry was funding most of my clients at the time. That's where all their bets were and their investments. And then I was lucky enough after I'd shut that down, that a friend of mine was working with Heavy Metal magazine. And he's like, "Hey, I work for this video game agency." I'm like, "What the hell is that?" And we're doing this pitch for Heavy Metal. And they are going, the new thing is that magazines are going online. They want to get more in touch with gamers. And I know about this social media stuff. And so that was my introduction to this friend of mine introduced me to Eric Eisenberg. And I helped them. I was their social guy that they brought in just for the pitch to help win a bid with Heavy Metal magazine. Now they didn't win, but they loved my work. And I still was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. My goal was always, hey, to find a company that can teach me. And then Eisenberg got a chance to bid on Resident Evil. Is it 5? Would 5 be 2009, 2010? We got 3?
3 or 4, I think.
3.
I
think it's 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And so I helped with the social media pitch on it, and that one ended up making Eisenberg famous because they did this big 3D projection on the wall at the Standard in downtown LA. They threw a big Resident Evil party, and they did. It was one of the first big experiential pieces in gaming. And I'm like, oh, I'm home. These are my people, And I had wandered around in everything, in restaurants and tech and all over the place. And randomly, after I'd shut my last agency down, I got lucky, and this buddy said, "Hey, we need a social media guy." And all of a sudden, I'm pitching Heavy Metal, which was a magazine I loved as a teenager, although my mom probably wouldn't be proud that that's the magazine I was reading as a teenager. And then Resident Evil and Monster Hunter Tri was one of the early ones I did as a consultant. And Eisenberg came to me and they said, "Hey, how would you like to start the social media department within our agency? We know you have the entrepreneurial spirit. How we'll fund you to kind of start something internally with what we're doing." And that, that really was, I was like, oh, okay. So this is the work I love doing, marketing and advertising, social media, moving from web to social media was a no brainer for me. It was just, anybody who's met me knows I like to talk. So social media allowed me just to talk all the time, everywhere, and that DNA of playing D&D in those early days and playing the early, Sid Meier's Pirates game and the original, when I was going to Cal Poly, we played MUDs, the precursor to MMOs. And now all of a sudden it's 2009 and I'm deep into Monster Hunter and Resident Evil. And, that you and I met right after that, Rick, because that's when You Shall Not Pass happened.
Yep.
That's what Eisenberg did, Lord of the Rings Online. And we famously, brought, that to that game. And it's kind of, history was written from there.
But how did you two end up together? It sounds like you are the two people most unlikely to meet based on your career paths.
Well, Mitch started in trailers and I'd come over from web to social media. And then Mitch and Seth came over to Eisenberg to do content. And Mitch, wasn't all the original people, weren't they all like failed actors and directors who now got like YouTube channels? And they were like, "Hey, I don't want to become a waiter. I'll be an influencer." And like you and Seth like knew all those guys who had been kind of in the Hollywood industry and now had like, it feels like they randomly started YouTube channels.
Yeah, it was the Wild West at the time. Like nobody really knew what they were doing, but they were getting viewership and they were trying to develop like, what is my online personality and my brand, like figuring out brand for the first time for people. We were trying to leverage that as it was being established, what it was and how to apply that to, creative advertising, kind of figure out as we go, try to integrate what people do and how to market that into, especially video games, how to leverage their audiences to sell games. It was just, we're all figuring out as it was developing.
So it's like social media was happening and we were figuring out how to be community. And then, Mitch and Seth had all these Hollywood people, the Tobuscus and Justine and C. Nanners and all the originals who'd all kind of come from the other side. And now we were like, well, and I think Mitch and I were both lucky that Eisenberg was really more known for live action video game trailers than they were game capture trailers. They did game capture trailers, but their live action trailers really were the crux of kind of what made them famous, and it's like right as Mitch was coming on, we were meshing that together the first time with APB Reloaded, where we were creating a game trailer, live action, but half the cast were these new influencers. So it's like the social media team was brought in to help work with them. They'd never done that before. They didn't know how to deal with these other people. And, there's no media behind it. Well, how's this going to work? Well, they have YouTube channels and they can talk about the day they're on the set. And it really was the birth of a genre, that for gaming is like, oh, you don't have to do this the traditional way. You don't have to buy media. You bring your YouTubers along. They talk on this new social media thing. And because they're in the trailer, they talk about it when it comes out, and that becomes the paid media side. And it really launched an entire industry. I hadn't seen it ever prior to APB Reloaded.
And then we met there, and I think we only worked at Eisenberg together for maybe a year and a half, 2 years tops.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we went our separate ways again for a while.
It's interesting that coincidentally, we all met on the same project, but at different times.
Right.
So like Mitch and I, our first interactions were basically phone calls because you were working on a live action trailer for an expansion pack for Lord of the Rings Online for Writers Row. So it's like we all kind of bumped into each other at different points, and somehow we all ended up here. So how did that happen? What was the conversation that led to actually
I explained to you,
creating
he was exhausted. He had no idea what I was saying.
The thing is, I know this to be true.
So I was at a private equity firm, and we were putting together agencies. So the DVD world was collapsing. They were trying to figure out, and a couple guys from THQ and I were brought into this private equity firm. They're like, we have these agencies. We need you to kind of bond them together and then create revenue. So, create work. And so we worked on the new Mad Max movie. We were same thing. We were shooting live action stuff for that. We were working a lot with Neil Blomkamp. Mitch Powers and I, who's a friend from THQ and Disney, were bringing in gaming work. And we had friends at Warner Brothers because of the Mad Max work. And it was when all the Toys to Life, like the Disney Infinity and Lego Dimensions came out. And we sold in this YouTube show, again, all very new. And we pitched these two young brothers who had a small show on Disney, and we're like, these guys would be perfect. Let's do the whole Toys to Life idea. If you guys remember, was that the game had DLC packs that got released, but there was also toys that you could buy that were integral to the game that you bought off the shelf. So we pitched this idea of these two young Disney kids would come and we'd build this set that looked like their bedroom. And every, 6 weeks, Mitch, right? There was like 10, 12. There were a lot of episodes.
It was like 12.
We had to have a lot of scripts because it's YouTube content. Every time there was a new toy, they had to be in their room talking about it, setting it up, getting excited. And we were small enough that we only had like one writer, like one legitimate writer. And I was like, I know somebody. He'd be great. And so I reached out to Mitch. I knew he'd left Eisenberg and he was out making independent films again. And I'm like, you should come in and help write these YouTube scripts for us. And now was Cammie wasn't in that room. She was in the room when you and I, the one before, well, the one after that, Mitch, right?
Correct. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So a friend of ours, we ended up meeting again at Warner Brothers later on, but we did these episodes, and I think 6 or 7 episodes in, the company got sold, which is what private equity firms do. They sell, they conglomerate things together. We had created just enough momentum and they were selling it off. And I was like, I miss working with Mitch. This was so great. It reminded me of all the things that we'd done together at Eisenberg. And as they sold it off, like we know when there's acquisitions, we know that extraneous people are going to go. And so I went to Mitch one day after we'd done, and I'm like, let's go to breakfast. Let's talk. Where did we go, Mitch? It was in
Burbank.
Burbank. It was like a pie, some pie place,
Yeah.
I think I've been watching Men in Black, so you have to go have pie when you have something to talk about. And his twins were, I don't know, how old were the kids? How old were the twins then?
Probably 2 or 3 at that time.
Right? Because they're like 12 now. They're going to be 13, and we're 8 years. So, do the math. So Mitch was bleary-eyed from having a set of twins at home and trying to make independent films. And I roped him in. I'm like, I've got this idea. We should, and we did. It was great. We sat down and we just talked about everything we'd learned, doing Lego Dimensions. And then we talked about everything that we both loved and hated about our experiences at other ages, whether it's something I built or our time at Eisenberg or at Trailer Park. Just what would we do different? And it felt like we were on the same page. We were frustrated by these things that happen and how conversations happen and how they lose focus on the work and the people. And that was it. And he's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." For me, this was number 7. And although it, you
didn't tell me that part when you
no.
I was going to say, I was like, were you aware
give
of
out
this?
too much information. Never give out too much information at first. But yeah, I mean, what am I? That's kind of right.
Yeah, and I was like, I was kind of apprehensive about getting back into the agency world. Like, I just thought I was done with it. And in theory, what we were talking about sounded fantastic, but in practical terms of pulling it off the way we wanted to do it, like, is there an avenue for us to do this? Cut to 8 years later, and the philosophies that we talked about that day, we're still trying to hold to, and seems to be working for us.
What made it so? What made it sound so challenging to pull off what you've made here at YPM, Mitch? What was so different that it just gave you pause?
Well, first of all, it's like, we had 0 clients, like, how were we going to start that aspect of it financially? And then the other part is just, when you do get work, it's big bucks and high pressure and all that kind of stuff. And how do you mitigate that in the atmosphere that we want? And, work with clients we'd like to work with, have people around the office that culturally fit what we wanted to do, and still be cutting edge and successful at the same time. It's like when you have this bohemian attitude toward doing things, how that manifests to you actually pulling stuff off can not work out sometimes. It takes, you have to have a lot of patience and forethought to keep the stress out of the room while you're doing this stuff. And it just, other people gravitated to it that we brought in, you and everybody else we brought into it kind of were along that, they maybe didn't have a good work environment some places they worked before. And this is a chance for them to establish themselves in a new way and, make it more of like a commune than like a agency.
I knew this was a cult.
You're not wrong.
No, and to be fair, I mean, and it's a nice
504C, right? A cult versus
it's a little C. It's not the capital
okay,
C.
all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a family, but not that family. Which is a really great segue into the whole conversation about YPM today and our current office culture. Do you guys think that you've pulled it off? I mean, I've been here a pretty long time. From where I sit, it feels like it. It doesn't. We've grown, but it doesn't feel like we've gotten lost in the shuffle of more people and things have become hierarchical and people get lost in the shuffle. So from where I'm sitting, I feel like you did, but do you guys see it that way?
I do. I think we're constantly reassessing all the time because, as the company grows with people that work here and our work grows and our commitment to things grow, like you always have to keep it in check. And we're always, okay, are we sticking to our guns on things? We're always talking to each other, like, are we doing this, what we said we're doing? Like, things that I think a lot of places they put on the back burner or is find less important, we put it in the front and work the other way around to make sure like people show up to work and they're happy. Like that's the key at the end of the day. Like we want people work here happy, and if they're happy, they'll perform well and they'll want to work with us and we'll be successful. And we're constantly double checking that all the time. And, nobody's been complaining.
And Mitch and I get pressure from other people all the time. We have to take this job, payroll's this, or, we have staff members now that have families, and they worry about, well, we shouldn't say no to this. We should say yes to this just because we got to make sure to have the money. And you have to constantly re-engage with everybody going, it's going to be okay. Do great work. Say no to the work that you just, your spidey senses say is going to be a problem, and something else will come along. There's been good years and bad years and tough ones, and we've made bad decisions here and there, and we've made mistakes. But I feel like Mitch and I constantly just fight the good fight going, are we doing this for the right reason? Are we doing it just because we want, because we're, we have to have billings, you have to, at a fear. And so he and I constantly check each other and challenge each other going, are you worried about this one? And sometimes it'll be me. I'll be the one be like, oh, and he'll be like, these people seem a little flaky, or, I don't know if this is a good fit for us. And, and it could be the other way too. Or, one of the staff, we have department heads and senior managers now, you get bigger, they're like, and I'm like, no, it'll be okay. And so it's a constant balance, but it's always work, but it's worthwhile.
It's terrifying too. Like, you have to be successful because you got to pay people. Like, you can't, arbitrarily turn stuff down because you don't want to do it all the time. But we take it in a case by case process, and success in other terms, happiness, with your work environment, and what you do is a form of success. I think for people that aren't used to having that, and so like bringing in the work and bringing in the money is great, but like wanting to show up to work and enjoying the people that you work around, I think goes a really long way.
Yeah, I can honestly say from my point of view, we've had clients where I know I've gone to you, Keith, and said, this client's really beating up our team.
Yeah.
they are not good to work with. And you've just said, fire them.
Yeah.
The client.
They're gone. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, we'll have the conversation and we don't need it that bad. And some of it was even during the slow times. So from where I sit, I would say you guys have done a really fantastic job of adhering to that. And the just best part of it, I can say, is those clients, or at least the individuals that we were working with, have come back with other projects.
Yeah.
Down the road.
I'd even say good people at bad clients have come back, and they've come back because they're like, I was impressed that you guys walked away.
Right.
They're like, because you were right. It was a hot mess. And they've come back, and now they're at a good client, or they're at a good company. And they come back to us, because it's like they came back because we fired them, for the right reasons.
Right. Because they knew we would work as hard as we could.
Yeah.
But also there was a point at which we're not just going to spin tires and do things because you say so if we don't feel it moves the work forward, if it's not going to be a good result.
Yeah.
I think also they get from us, like, we're incredibly transparent with the people that we work with.
Overly.
That freaks people out that we're so casual. They think we're not serious, but like we understand everybody's issues and problems, and we have the same one. So like, want to have a good, strong relationship with your clients, and take the pressure off and the stress, and say, I got your back. You got my back, I got your back, and let's just do this the right way, and not have to like play a game of like chess with your clients and stuff. Like, people sometimes don't think we're serious as we work. They think we don't take things seriously, but we're dead serious. But we're just trying to take off that level of unnecessary stress and pressure is invasive in this industry, totally, all the time.
Absolutely. And I don't want to leave the impression that everything has been sunshine and rainbows from day one, because it hasn't. I mean, a lot of stuff has gone down in the last 8 years. There have been challenges. I mean, we've had a pandemic, and work was really scarce during the pandemic, and there was a struggle to keep the company going. Like everybody faced, there was this struggle. How did you guys navigate that, and how did doing that strengthen the company and lead to a better team like we have?
I stopped paying Mitch immediately. That's the first thing I did. I'm like, dude, no,
Mitch gets paid?
Your Lamborghini is just too much. I think that the best thing we did was Mitch and I went to like when the pandemic shut down, we were like, look, we've learned from our past experiences, and so we make sure to put money away for a rainy day. And it's so, this goes back even to the last point about sometimes, walking away from clients. We're like, it's so hard to find good people. We'll take care of all of you if you guys just do what. Mitch used to talk about this at other agencies. People worry about their department and what work does their department have. And we talk to everybody, and we're like, if you're willing to do whatever work comes in, we'll all figure it out together. And we did. We didn't lose anybody, from March 13th, 2019 until, I don't think until June of 22. I don't think we had anybody leave, and we didn't have to let anybody go. But it's like artists were doing influencer research, and, writers were doing graphics, or they were tracking links, and it was just all hands on deck. Who we had, and they did it joyfully. They were like, "Hey, I'm in. What do we got to do?"
No, definitely. It was really something to see, especially since we were all remote then, right?
Right.
But it still very much felt like just a group of people that had each other's backs, that were determined to make sure that what work we had was done well and was done properly, and efficiently. It was very impressive to be a part of that from an employee standpoint.
Yeah, we were in the sweet spot as we had enough people to get stuff done, but not too many people were like,
Right.
you would not know what's going on in the company because everyone is remote and everything. There's like, what are we doing? Like, it was all, we can have conversations together as a complete company and discuss where we're at and what was going on and what our work was. And it wasn't overbearing that there was too many people that we were doing this with, that you might have felt isolated even more because your company is so big and it's just, you only have, one meeting a day with somebody. We were on all day with everybody communicating. We would do social things, we wanted to make sure that we were all in this together because it was scary for everybody. That time was terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, we even had, didn't we have like a pumpkin painting?
There was a
art contest
paint night and
there was
wine time and pumpkin carving.
Yeah. Somehow the office culture was retained along with everything else. It was, and I think it was a key reason why we did get through it, kind of as a group, so that when we did go back to office, there was still that connection with everyone. There wasn't lost time, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't this sense of, oh, these are strangers to me now.
And I think the transition out of COVID, not that it's done. I mean, there's still COVID around, but it was a huge change from what the work looked like in daily regiments before COVID, and then transitioning out to trying to go back in the office. I think we handled it like ease back in the right way, and what did we learn from COVID and people's personal times, and giving making sure everybody's gets their stuff done personal and stuff like that. Like we learned from that time period and applied it to post pandemic.
Yeah, and even today, we're really a hybrid workspace.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So there's so many days in, so many days out. I'm on the wrong coast, so I mean, it's still very much, the best people for the jobs doing their jobs because we have each other's back. I mean, I think that's really a big thing here, is how much we lean into supporting each other. The culture is really solid here. One of the things I appreciate. But now I have a question. Let's play pop quizzes. What was YPM's first client? It's blank stares.
Well, no, I wanted to answer EA because they are the ones that talked to us first. But it was the one I was on vacation still at the private equity firm when Mitch had to go on site. Was that Breathometer?
Breathometer, yeah.
That was okay.
So we got our first job, and Keith went on vacation that day.
I hadn't even started I hadn't really even started the company yet. It was so funny. We'd started it, and then something popped in before I'd given notice, but we hadn't even started yet. And so I was like, and I need this tomorrow. I'm like, Mitch, and he's like, all right.
What do you see as some of the most important milestones of the last 8 years? So, let Mitch start, because Keith will just go and go and go.
Very true.
I think the physical manifestation of what the company looked like and where we were, like, our first meeting as a company was in a Panera Bread. We'd squat in Panera and work, just us two. And then we went to a WeWork, and then a couple other people came there. And then from there, we went to our first real office. And now we're in a space that's 3 to 4 times the size of that post-pandemic. So your environment was changing the whole time. And it wasn't something that like you think you're doing well. Like you can see physically things are working out because we're the constant growth pattern of the last 8 years. Physically, with the amount of people we work with, who we're working with, the talent we're bringing to the company, it's been a constant evolution, which you can visibly see with your eyes and you walk around it. And I think that's the telltale sign. Like that doesn't happen unless you're doing something right.
We have our own bathrooms now.
We have a loading dock now.
We have a load. That's true. That's how you go from shared workspace to we have our own offices. It was a big open space, but we still had the kitchen was a common area, almost like when we were at WeWork, and the bathrooms were down the hall. Now we have a studio. It's like office space, and there's a little studio and warehouse and its own bathrooms. I was like, wow.
We can do this without having to scream over a wall. Shut up. We're trying to.
That's true. Mitch used to yell at me all the time because he was trying to be on a conference. Our original conference room didn't have full walls for, I don't know why.
Like 7/8 walls with like
a foot
and a half at the top. Yeah.
But thank goodness we had those Anthem boxes because they sealed it up. So
above a taco restaurant.
Above a taco. Oh, it smelled so good.
Constantly hungry and loud.
Exactly.
That was the original office. Yeah. No, that was actually the first time I joined in like physical meetings. Previously, it had only been just remote. And when you needed me for something, I would come out, piece by piece, because there wasn't a space really then.
No.
Keith, milestone.
Milestone. I'm trying to think of something better than Mitch's. It's that's a tough one.
For the record, Mitch's all equate to spending money.
Oh, that's very true.
Having money to spend.
Let's see if there's a better one than kind of seeing the differences in the space. You know what? I think NASCAR was a milestone project. It's like we were being hired by like a public company, not in the video game space, for our expertise in video games. And it was bring influencers, have a camera crew. We were on site at the Daytona 500. Technically, it was part of NASCAR's Super Bowl campaign. Yep. So, I mean, that felt like it was like a page turner from us being these little guys that our friends were giving us, our friends at EA and our friends at Disney or Ubi were giving us work, and we were doing kind of the things that they knew of us from where we were before, where NASCAR was like this new thing, and it brought all the pieces together, kind of like those are the pieces that to me replicated what we were like doing with Lego Dimensions. It's like it was bringing all those pieces together. It was the next phase, the next version or evolution of like that APB Reloaded live action trailer at Eisenberg all those years before that kind of started the idea. It was like APB Reloaded, then it was Lego Dimensions, and then NASCAR was where Mitch and I feel like Mitch and I established Yellow Pike as its own really unique thing.
It really
started everything.
Yeah, it really was a complicated project too, because we were dealing with two other agencies, if I remember correctly,
right.
Fox Sports, NASCAR, agencies that we were bringing talent in from,
a couple public agencies.
Yeah. So there was a lot. I mean, it's kind of a surreal thing as a race fan to be driven around Daytona 500 weekend by the marketing manager as you're talking about the strategy and putting things together. There were so many moving pieces to that. It was really, and
the president shutting down all.
Well,
yeah, president shutting everything down in the middle of our live stream. That's always fun.
Yeah, when everything got blocked because we were using the backpacks to do the remote live from the paddock.
That was the big idea, was the backpacks were going to bring it all together, and then they're like, all right, and the president's coming, 3, 2, 1, you're about to go out.
Cellular was killed. Yeah, there were very unique challenges.
Yeah, but I mean that really then led to everything else. That led to Need for Speed with Jake Paul. That led to Space Camp this year with Starfield. It's like, NASCAR really launched all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Without a question. I every now and then names and people still pop up in the inbox of, hey, can you guys do this? So right. I know you guys are seeing it as well. But so I guess the end of this, and we're going to try and keep Keith under 5 minutes.
Uh-oh.
Because we got stuff to do today, guys.
Oh, all right.
That's how it is in the office, by the way.
Oh, it's absolutely. You ask Keith a question and you look for the yes or no, but you get when I was 12, and then it just goes.
It's bad. I understand
it. Where to next, boss?
Ooh.
What's next?
My easy answer is, it's funny. I'm not a big on the financial. But I also like to set the goal that like feels impossible. Like, how there's this advertising holy grail of $100 million. You got, that. And it's like, it doesn't mean anything. If any of you guys watched Gary Vee, especially back in the day, he talked about buying the jets, and then he'll tell you half the time he'll probably never get to buy the jets. But it's just this massive, almost unattainable thing. So that way you're always chasing something. But like what's next? I tell Mitch this all the time. I want to see us like balanced. It's like during COVID, everything shut down, and not that we were a one-trick pony, but there was only one thing to do. And I love going out there and seeing artists drawing things and the editing team, building something, and people back in the warehouse building. It's like phase one, like this first 8 years was, Mitch and I talk about, it's always like, we were like little kid soccer team. Everyone just traveled together, right? They all followed the one ball. The next phase, I can see it, is that, we're using 2-3 conference rooms. People are building something in the warehouse. There's something going on in the studio. There's people, in another country doing a shoot. We're like almost there. That's what's next. The money works itself out. But I think the part that Mitch and I'm not to speak for you, Mitch, but it's like what we talk about, though, is that fun of seeing like 5 things going on at once and getting to really enjoy that view going, this is amazing. It's amazing to see that turn into something.
Yeah, I think same thing. Like, I'd love to walk into a conference room and not know what's happening. Like, oh, I didn't know we were doing this project. This is great. Like, to like learn by like autonomous parties doing different things in a company, that we can remove ourselves from all the micro things on some things sometimes and just let the teams do their thing. And to be able to like go talk to them and sit in and give my 2 cents but turn over ownership of things to other people and let them blossom. I think like if we had enough work to do that, where we could constantly be moving Keith and I from project to project just to check in and make sure everybody's good, everybody's happy, and let the team take off and do their own thing. I think that would be awesome.
For the record, for those listening, the little kids soccer game gets used a lot in the and in more meeters where that example.
It is a constant metaphor.
the little kids soccer game and be a duck. That's those are the two. Those are the two. We unfortunately are out of time, or fortunately, depending on what each next story might be. So I just want to thank you guys. It has been a great 8 years. I was doing math the other day, and my math is almost as good as Keith's. 7.5 years, I think.
Pretty darn close.
That I've been here. So I've been along for a very fun, very insane, and generally enjoyable ride. So I want to thank you guys for that. I look forward to the next date, and we'll do this again on the next date. We'll see if
we'll do it again. See you next year in 8 years. There you go.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening. I hope you've learned something about the craziness of agency life, and don't take pie from Keith because he'll loop you into something eventually. Don't ever do that. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Make sure you check us out on yellowpikemedia.com and follow us on all the socials, which you can find in the links below, because Jared's going to put them up, right? Thank you. Have a great time. See you next month.